Penelope drove to a rundown motel for a discreet meeting with Peter. She went without her bodyguards behind. Peter had chosen the motel because of its obscurity on the outskirts of town. As she got out of the car, she couldn't help but notice the creaking walls and peeled paint. She still wondered why he had chosen such an obscure place for their meeting. She wore a scarf and dark sunglasses to avoid being recognized by anyone. Even though she knew it was highly impossible, she still didn't want to take chances. As she entered the motel, she was immediately hit by a strong, unpleasant smell of sweat, alcohol, and cigarettes. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling, adding to the grimy atmosphere. The motel manager, a bald man with food particles stuck in his teeth, greeted her. "Good evening, ma'am." "How can I help you?" he asked. Penelope approached the counter, trying to mask her disgust. As she walked, she would hear the creaking sounds of the wood on the floor. "You're not from around here, are you?" the manager commented. "How did you know?" Penelope replied, surprised. "Well, you're not familiar, and your clothes are quite fancy," he answered. Penelope nodded, not wanting to chat. "I'm here to meet someone." "Room 200, the manager interrupted, cutting her off. Surprised, she took the key from him and headed upstairs. The stairs creaked under her steps, so she avoided touching the railing. In room 200, she knocked, and the door opened immediately. Peter, grinning widely, greeted her with enthusiasm. It was almost as if he had been waiting for her at the door. "You're finally here," Peter said, stepping aside to let her in. Penelope entered the room, which was even worse than the rest of the motel. The fans squeaked, and a drip from the toilet added to the unpleasant noise. The smell was overwhelming, so she covered her nose and quickly sprayed her perfume around the room to mask the odor. "Why did you choose this place?" Penelope asked, clearly annoyed. "I can hardly breathe in here, and it's so hot," she said, fanning herself with her hand. Peter smiled and closed the door. "It's not that bad. I needed somewhere discreet. You know Jacob has eyes and ears everywhere. I have to be careful." "Discreet, my foot. Do you know who I am? Penelope Antonov, and you bring me to this godforsaken place?" she spat. "Calm down. We won't be spending the night here, so relax." Penelope glared at him. "I don't have time for this. Why am I here?" Peter sighed, looking mischievous. He stepped closer and leaned in to kiss her. Before he could, Penelope slapped him hard across the face. "Next time you try something like that, it'll be worse than a slap," she warned. Jeffrey burst into laughter, holding his cheek. He flopped onto a sofa, still chuckling. "Why are you doing this?" Penelope asked, exasperated. Jeffrey's laughter faded, and he looked at her seriously. "Doing what?" "I'm your friend's wife," Penelope exclaimed. "Since when has that been an excuse?" Jeffrey retorted. Penelope was silent for a moment, struggling to find words. "You promised 10 years ago that would be the last time." "Well, promises are meant to be broken, aren't they? Don't you have a wife at home? Don't you at least have the decency enough to respect her? Don't you ever bring my wife into this, don't you dare!" He fired at her almost immediately. "You know what? I'm fed up with this," Penelope shouted. "I swore never to do this again, and I'm not going back on my promise. You know what? I'm leaving." She stormed toward the door. "Does he know?" Peter asked, his question making her stop in her tracks. "How? How do you mean?" she stammered. "Does he know?" Peter repeated, his tone now serious and threatening. Penelope turned to face him, her anger palpable. She understood exactly what he was implying, but she didn't want him to jest over her. "Don't you even dare! If you don't want Jacob to find out about the secret you've been hiding for years, you better come back here," Peter said, his voice cold. She was not surprised. She had already known him and what he was capable of. She already knew he would say something like that. She was not surprised in any way, but she had at least expected him not to mention it now. Peter stood up. He walked towards her and faced her, touching her hair and then her face. "Why do you make me angry? If you had just listened to me." She pushed his hands away, her face showing no emotion. "Here's the deal," Peter said. "We will keep doing this until I've had enough, or I'll tell Jacob." "Don't do this," Penelope cried, trying to hold back her tears. "Imagine Jacob finds out your secret," Peter said, his voice cold. "This lavish lifestyle you love so much will vanish in the blink of an eye. You enjoy being on top, don't you? You like the money and power that being an Antonov brings, right? Then do what I ask and stop upsetting me." Penelope realized she couldn't change his mind. She had been forced to comply with his threats for 10 years and felt powerless. She knew she needed to endure until she had some leverage. For now, she was stuck. Don't you realize that you are also in his too? I mean, what would Jacob think when he realizes his best friend and someone he sees as a brother betrayed him? Huh. What do you think he would say? Peter burst into a hearty laughter. You still do not understand. Understand what? She asked, confused about why he was laughing. You don't understand that I do not have anything to lose, but you, on the other hand, you have a lot of things to lose if your secret gets out. It suddenly dawned on her that he was right after all. She sure did have a lot to lose. Don't do this, please, she begged. This time her voice was filled with sincerity. The almighty Penelope Antonov begs. He burst into laughter immediately. You know, you also need to think about your son, Briston. Imagine your secret gets out. Do you know where that leaves him? She sighed deeply and looked at him angrily and folded her palms together. What do you want me to do? Peter smiled. Now that's more like it. Undress and lie on the bed, he ordered. Penelope's eyes blazed with fury as she reluctantly sat on the bed and began to undress. He observed her with a cold, detached expression, his face showing no hint of empathy. Clearly entertained by her discomfort, he seemed to take pleasure in her distress. After she had undressed, he walked over to the switch and turned off the lights, plunging the room into darkness. Penelope arrives at the Antonov mansion late at night. She turned off the car and took the key from the ignition, mentally preparing her story for Jacob. She knew he would question her, and she didn't want to raise any suspicions. She had never gone out without her driver or bodyguard, and she knew he would question her. After a deep breath, she stepped out of the car. Entering the mansion, she noticed how unusually quiet it was. She looked around the living room expecting to see Jacob or Briston, but found no one. They must have all gone to bed, she thought. She quickly went upstairs, trying to be as quiet as possible to avoid waking anyone. At her bedroom door, she peered inside. Jacob was fast asleep, and for a moment she felt irritated that he hadn't waited up for her. But then she saw it as a stroke of luck. She could change and slip into bed without him noticing. She entered the room quietly and closed the door gently behind her. Almost immediately, Jacob's eyes opened, as if he had been waiting for her. Where are you coming from? Penelope froze in the doorway. I thought you were asleep, she stammered. Jacob sat up straight. You didn't go with your bodyguard or your driver. Where have you been? He demanded. Penelope swallowed hard and met his gaze. She had to keep her story straight. I went to see a friend. I lost track of time. A friend? Yes, she just lost her husband. Jacob looked at her, his gaze intense. Is that why you went alone? Without your bodyguard or your driver? Yes. I didn't want to overwhelm her. Jacob paused, seemingly considering her explanation. Okay then. Freshen up and come to bed, he said finally, and he lay back down. Huh? And do it very quietly. I'm very tired and need to rest, Jacob said, shutting his eyes. A few seconds later, he began to snore. She was taken aback by his casual attitude. She was surprised at how indifferent he seemed, especially since he hadn't called or texted while she was out. She sighed deeply, pushing aside her frustration with Jacob. Her immediate concern was finding a way to deal with Peter. She walked into the bathroom to freshen up, her mind heavy with the day's events. As she stepped into the shower, she let the hot water flow over her from head to toe, trying to wash away the lingering discomfort from her encounter with Peter. She scrubbed her body vigorously, almost as if she could cleanse herself of the memories and emotions that clung to her. Each swipe of the washcloth seemed to intensify her frustration, and she scrubbed so hard that she nearly hurt herself. The water ran clear, but the feeling of unease remained. After her shower, she wrapped herself in a towel and quickly changed into her pajamas. She walked quietly to her side of the bed, her movements deliberate and cautious. As she settled under the covers, she glanced over at Jacob, who was sound asleep, his snores filling the room with a rhythmic sound. Suddenly, Peter's words echoed in her mind, and she felt a pang of anxiety. The thought of Jacob discovering her secret sent a shiver down her spine. What if he found out the truth she had been hiding? The fear was almost paralyzing. She watched Jacob's relaxed form, the steady rise and fall of his chest as he slept. Penelope would do anything to protect herself and her son. The stakes were high, and she was prepared to go to any lengths to ensure her safety and her son Briston's future. Penelope's mind raced as she thought about securing Bristol's position in the family business. It was crucial for her that Bristol became the CEO. She knew that Peter was likely to reveal her secret sooner or later, and she was determined to prevent that from happening. She couldn't afford to let her guard down, not until Bristol was firmly established in his role. The thought of being at Peter's mercy was unbearable, but she knew she had no choice but to endure his demands until her plan was in place. With a deep sigh, she lay quietly beside Jacob. She pulled the duvet up to her chin and reached for the night light, turning it off. The room was now bathed in darkness, and the only sound was Jacob's steady breathing. She stared into the darkness, her mind racing with thoughts and worries. She needed sleep, but the weight of her situation made it elusive. As she waited for sleep to come, she tried to push aside the images of Peter and the harsh reality of her circumstances. She had to stay focused on her goal and remain steadfast in her determination. No matter what it took, she was willing to do whatever was necessary to protect her family and secure Bristol's future. Her resolve was unwavering, even if it meant enduring Peter's manipulations and maintaining a facade that was becoming increasingly difficult to manage. For now, all she could do was lie in the darkness, hoping for rest and preparing for the challenges that lay ahead. Dynasty Agency was abuzz with activity as the press, paparazzi, and reporters filled everywhere, creating a sense of excitement and anticipation. The agency had long been known for its meticulous selection process, making each signing event a spectacle to behold. The buzz in the air was electric, as everyone speculated about whom the new model might be. The press had always been drawn to these events, eager to catch a glimpse of the fresh faces joining Dynasty's prestigious roster. In the midst of the buzzing environment, Gordon's sleek car rolled to a stop in front of the Dynasty Agency's grand entrance. Inside the car, Nara sat with her heart pounding, her nerves on edge. She peered out of the car window, observing the throng of reporters and photographers as they hustled to get the best position to take perfect shots. Her anxiety suddenly began to spike. Today was a significant day. Her signing day with Dynasty. The moment she had been dreaming of for so long was finally here. Gordon, who had kindly offered to accompany her, sat beside her, sensing her nervousness. He reached over and gently touched her hand, attempting to soothe her anxious heart. "You don't have to be afraid," he said softly, his voice a calm anchor amidst the chaos. Nara turned to look at him, her eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and apprehension. "What if they don't like me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Gordon raised an eyebrow, clearly puzzled. "Who?" "The press," she clarified, her gaze returning to the bustling crowd outside. "The reporters. What if they don't like me?" Gordon chuckled, a sound that seemed to cut through the tension in the car. "Since when did you start worrying about what people say about you?" Nara offered a small, uncertain smile. "But, Nara, you were accepted here because you deserved it," Gordon said firmly, his gaze steady and reassuring. "You don't have to care about what other people think." Nara took a deep breath, closing her eyes briefly as she tried to calm her racing thoughts. She exhaled slowly. "I think I'll get going now," she said, attempting to muster her courage. Gordon glanced out the tinted car window, his expression suddenly serious. "Hold on a minute," he said, an unexpected urgency in his voice. Before Nara could question him, he had already opened his door and stepped out of the car. As soon as his tall, distinguished figure emerged, the crowd of reporters and photographers immediately shifted their attention. The air was filled with murmurs of surprise and excitement. Flashbulbs popped as cameras aimed at Gordon, capturing his every move. "That's Gordon Antonov," one of the reporters exclaimed, his voice filled with awe and disbelief. "What's he doing here?" another voice questioned, the crowd's curiosity growing by the second. Gordon, with his impeccable aura and confident stride, moved gracefully around the car to the passenger side. He opened the door and extended his hand to Nara, who looked at him with a mix of surprise and gratitude. Without a word, she took his hand, allowing him to help her out of the car. As Nara emerged from the vehicle, the crowd's attention was immediately drawn to her. The buzz of excitement grew louder, with every eye fixed on her. Cameras flashed incessantly, capturing the moment from every possible angle. The reporters who had been so focused on Gordon were now scrambling to identify and photograph who had just alighted from the car. "Who is that?" one reporter shouted, his voice cutting through the din. The question was met with a chorus of speculation and rapid-fire questions as everyone sought to uncover the identity of the intriguing new face. Gordon, standing by her side, offered one last piece of encouragement. "You've got this, Nara. Remember, you belong here." "Hold on, isn't she the one rumored to be Gordon's wife?" another asked. So it was not a rumor after all. Everyone rushed to them to take photos of them. Nara would feel her heart beat as she smiled in front of the camera. Now she finally understood what it meant to be an Antonov. Gordon bent towards her and whispered in her ear, "You have got this." His words were comforting to her. They soothed her nerves. She smiled upon hearing them. Almost immediately, two men dressed in black suits came out and walked towards Nara. "Is she the new model?" "I think she is." Everyone was surprised. Everything was unfolding fast, right before their eyes. The two men, upon seeing Gordon, immediately bowed in respect. Nara was a little bit confused. It was as if they knew him, but she immediately rebuffed the idea from her mind. "We have come to escort her in," one of them said. Gordon nodded and looked at Nara. "Don't forget to smile." Nara smiled at him and immediately followed her escort into the building. She walked so beautifully well that everyone around was mesmerized by her beauty. She wore a black dress which had silver stones shimmering around it, and her long black hair fell touching her waist. The black gown fell down to her legs, accentuating her figure. Everyone wanted to have contact with her, but the men who had come to accompany her shielded her from them. Nara looked around as she walked. She couldn't help but smile. This was what she had worked hard for. This was the fame she wanted. Finally, her dreams were coming to reality. As soon as Nara had entered Dynasty with her escorts, Gordon went back into his car. He settled back into his seat as the driver started the engine and pulled away. "Where to, sir?" the driver asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. "Let's head to the construction site," Gordon replied, closing his eyes and taking a deep breath. He could still sense Nara's scent lingering in the car. Suddenly, the car came to a screeching halt, the tires protesting loudly. Gordon's eyes flew open. "What's the problem?" he asked, confusion in his voice. The driver, visibly shaken, gasped for breath. A car just swerved right in front of us." Gordon looked up to see a black car that had nearly collided with theirs. "Let me go check it out," the driver said, stepping out of the car. Gordon leaned back, trying to relax, but kept his gaze fixed on the scene outside. He saw his driver approaching the black car, attempting to solve the situation. Moments later, the driver returned, looking concerned. "Sir, he's asking to see you first." "Me?" Gordon asked, puzzled. "Yes," the driver confirmed. "He insists on speaking with you before he moves his car." Gordon glanced around. He needed to visit the construction site on time because he had other engagements that needed his attention. Nonetheless, looking at how serious his driver sounded, he knew that the man in the black car was serious about not moving until he came out. Resigned, Gordon stepped out, and almost immediately the man emerged from his vehicle as well. The moment their eyes met, Gordon recognized him immediately. It was Andrew. Gordon looked at him. He immediately knew what he had come to do. He knew it was because of Nara, but he braced himself nevertheless. Gordon walked deliberately toward Andrew, whose fast, aggressive strides contrasted with his measured pace. The tension between them crackled like static electricity in the air. As they closed the distance, Andrew's anger exploded. Without warning, he landed a powerful blow to Gordon's face, sending him sprawling onto the pavement. "Do you know who you've just hit?" Gordon's driver yelled, rushing to help him up. His concern was evident as he reached out to help him up. "It's okay," Gordon said, cutting him off sharply. He winced slightly, his jaw already swelling from the impact. "But, get back to the car," Gordon ordered firmly. The driver hesitated, but sensing the gravity of the situation, bowed his head and retreated, his eyes still flicking nervously towards them. Gordon dusted his clothes, touching his sore jaw as he faced Andrew. "Let's call this even. Now, will you move your car? I have somewhere important to be." Andrew's face twisted with defiance. "Gordon, or whatever your name is, you don't get to tell me what to do." Gordon's lips curled into a slight, enigmatic smile. "Why do you want to see me?" he asked, his voice calm but edged with a steely resolve. Andrew's rage flared anew. He rushed at him, grabbing him by the collar. How dare you? How dare you barge into our lives and destroy everything we've built? Gordon stared down at Andrew's hands on his collar, his composure unshaken. Let go of me, he said with unwavering authority. And if I don't? Andrew challenged, his grip tightening. You won't like the consequences, Gordon warned, his voice taking on a sharper edge. His eyes flashed with a cold intensity that made Andrew falter. The fierceness in Gordon's gaze was unmistakable, and Andrew, recognizing the threat, released Gordon's collar reluctantly. Gordon adjusted his collar and took a step back, maintaining his calm demeanor. Listen, he began, his tone controlled. I didn't waltz into anyone's life to destroy it, as you claim. Nara and I are married. If you have an issue with that, take it up with her, not me. Andrew's face contorted with disbelief. Excuse me? Look, I don't fear you. You could have all the power and influence in the world, but you won't get my fear. I've come to warn you. Cancel whatever plans you have and let Nara go. Gordon laughed, a short, sharp sound that expressed his incredulity. Let her go? Come on, I'm not holding her hostage. If you're not, then why are you threatening her with a lawsuit? Andrew shot back, his voice filled with desperation. Gordon met Andrew's gaze, noting the anger and frustration in his eyes. It was clear that Andrew felt like he had lost something precious. Do you think I don't know about the contract you forced her to sign? Gordon asked, his voice steady. I don't have time for this. If you have an issue, I'm not the one you need to talk to. Move your car. I need to be somewhere right now. Gordon turned to head back to his car, but the sound of Andrew's sobs made him stop in his tracks. He turned to see Andrew on his knees, tears streaming down his face. Please, Andrew begged, his voice cracking with emotion. I can't do anything without Nara. I love her with every breath in me. I haven't been sane since she left. Please, Gordon, give her back to me. Gordon looked at Andrew with a mix of pity and resolve. It pained him to see a man so broken, but he couldn't allow himself to be swayed. He had invested too much already, and he couldn't possibly let her go now. You don't have to do this, Gordon said softly, but his resolve remained firm. Please, you and I both know you're not in love with her. Just let her go and don't ruin two people's lives. Andrew's pleas were met with Gordon's unyielding silence. Finally, Gordon spoke, his voice cold and decisive. Andrew, get out of my way. He turned and walked back to his car, closing his eyes tightly as he climbed inside. His conscience pricked at him, but he refused to acknowledge it. This was no longer just about securing a company. He cared for Nara deeply and couldn't let her go easily. What should I do, sir? The driver asked, his voice filled with concern as he waited for Gordon's instructions. Gordon took a deep breath and opened his eyes. Turn around, he said finally, his voice resolute. The driver nodded and began to maneuver the car, his gaze lingering on Andrew as he did. Gordon watched the man through the window, feeling a mixture of guilt, a guilt he could do nothing about. The signing room was bustling with anticipation as Dynasty Agency's top shareholders gathered. Each person in the room was eager to see the new model, recommended by none other than Gordon Antonov himself. Everyone had always known Gordon to avoid anything related to the modeling agency, which only heightened their curiosity about the new face he endorsed. As the door to the signing room swung open, Nara entered, flanked by the two men dressed in suits who had escorted her in earlier. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene before her. Top board members of Dynasty Agency were seated around the room, and Harry, the director, was among them. Nara felt a chill run down her spine as she stepped further into the room, acutely aware of the intense gaze of every person present. The whispers began almost immediately, punctuated by the clatter of a camera as a photographer adjusted his equipment in the corner. I know her, one of the board members murmured, his voice tinged with surprise. Yeah, she's the one who dazzled everyone at our last event, another added, clearly impressed. No, not just that, she's Gordon Antonov's wife, came the astonished response. What? Gordon Antonov is married? A third voice exclaimed. Yes, of course, didn't you know? As the murmurs spread, Nara's curiosity grew. Why were they reacting this way? She felt the weight of their stares and somehow she became uncomfortable. Harry, with a broad grin, stood up and approached Nara. Nara, welcome. We've all been expecting you, he said warmly. He extended his hand to her and guided her to a chair. After she was seated, Harry returned to his place at the head of the room. Clearing his throat, he announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Nara Antonov, our newest model." The announcement sent waves of surprise and admiration through the room. Nara watched as every board member stood and bowed in respect. The gesture was unexpected and left her feeling both honored and confused. Was it really about being an Antonov that made them bow, or were the Antonovs somehow connected to Dynasty? She was utterly confused. Once the board members were seated again, Harry picked up a file and walked over to Nara. "This is the contract that binds you to us. Read through it and then sign it," he said with a reassuring smile. Nara took the pen that was already placed on the table and began to skim through the document. After a thorough review, she signed her name at the bottom. As soon as she put down the pen, applause erupted in the boardroom. The sound of clapping filled the room, and the faces of the board members radiated with genuine happiness. "You are officially welcome to Dynasty Agency," Harry said, extending his hand for a handshake. One by one, the board members also stood to shake her hand, each offering warm smiles and congratulations. Nara returned the smile, her initial confusion giving way to a sense of fulfillment. The whirlwind of events had left her overwhelmed, but she felt a surge of joy and pride at being accepted into such a prestigious agency. "Now it's time for pictures," Harry announced. The board members gathered around Nara, forming a semicircle behind her. They posed for a group photo capturing the moment of celebration. The camera flashed repeatedly, freezing the joyous occasion in time. After the photos were taken, the doors to the signing room opened immediately. "Let's go out and announce you to the world," Harry offered, stretching out his hand. Nara smiled and took it. He led her out of the signing room and into a sea of reporters and journalists eager for her attention. Flashes from cameras popped from every direction as everyone tried to get snapshots of the newest model. Reporters shouted questions, but Harry quickly stepped in to manage the chaos. Overwhelmed by the sudden attention, Nara was amazed at how quickly she had become popular. As she smiled and waved at the cameras, she felt a deep satisfaction knowing her hard work was paying off. After her session with the reporters and paparazzi, Harry took her hand and led her away. The photographers tried to follow but were stopped by security guards. They entered an elevator and Harry pressed the button on the top floor and the door shut closed. "I hope everything isn't moving too fast for you," he asked with a smile. "Oh, not really," Nara replied. "Don't worry, you'll get used to it. And you'll need to get used to seeing paparazzi around you from now on." "Huh?" Surprised? "That's one of the perks of being a top model," Harry said, still smiling. Nara was taken aback. She had heard many stories about how intrusive paparazzi could be, but she never imagined she would have to deal with them herself. However, she was ready to embrace the challenge as part of her new career. "I want to introduce you to someone," Harry said. "Who?" Nara asked. "Your new manager," he replied. Nara's eyes lit up with excitement. She was about to meet her own personal manager and almost jumped for joy, but managed to contain herself. When the elevator doors opened, Harry led her into his office. There, Nara saw a woman sitting on a sofa with her back turned. "Who is that? Is she my new manager?" she asked, surprised. "Yes, Nara, meet Elena Campush, your manager," Harry said. Elena stood up, turned around, and smiled warmly at Nara. "Elena?" Nara exclaimed in surprise. "Surprise!" Elena replied with a big smile, walking over to her. How did this happen?" Nara asked, still in shock. "I wanted it to be a surprise," Elena said, grinning. Nara looked at Elena confused. She didn't understand what was happening. The last she knew, Elena had a good job at a modeling agency, so why would she want to be her manager? Harry noticed the confusion between them. "Nara, do you know her?" "Yes, she's my—" Nara started to explain, but Elena quickly interrupted. Can I have a word with you outside?" Elena said sharply, cutting off Nara. Still surprised, Nara turned to Harry. "I'm sorry, excuse us," she said, and walked out with Elena following closely. Harry stood there puzzled. He wondered why Elena would choose to manage someone she was already acquainted with. He knew Elena had always been up to no good, but this was unexpected. Outside the office, Nara turned to Elena, her face flushed with confusion. "What's going on? Why are you my manager?" "Geez, Nara, I wanted it to be a surprise. It seems you don't like it." "But you have a job, don't you?" Nara asked, her voice tinged with concern. "I resigned from that job," Elena replied calmly. Why? Nara asked, even more surprised. Elena smiled and said, Stop all these questions, Nara. Aren't you happy I'm your manager? I mean, we are like sisters, aren't we? You should have told me about this, Nara said, still unsettled. Well, I wanted it to be a surprise. It seems you don't like it, Elena said, her tone a mix of hurt and disappointment. No, I do like it, but it just came so suddenly. Wait a minute, how do you know Harry? Nara asked. Elena paused, trying to choose her words carefully. Well, I pulled some strings. Some strings? You and I know how hard it is to get a job here, Elena. Let's just say I was lucky, Elena said with a grin. Nara looked at her with suspicion but eventually relaxed. Seeing Elena's firm, sincere smile, she realized it was meant to be a surprise. She decided not to spoil it. Aren't you happy? Elena asked softly. I am, Nara replied finally. Then, Elena stopped speaking when she heard the sound of high heels clacking. It was Yvonne. Your sister is here, Elena whispered. Nara turned to see Yvonne approaching them. She sighed, knowing Yvonne often brought trouble with her. Yvonne walked up to them and looked at Nara, then at Elena. Leave us, she ordered Elena with a tone that left no room for argument. How dare you speak to her like that? Nara shot back at Yvonne, who simply rolled her eyes. It's okay, Nara. I'll be waiting in Harry's office, Elena said. No, you stay right here, Nara insisted. No, it's better if I leave. I don't want to get caught in the middle of this, Elena said, touching Nara's hand to show everything was all right. She then went into Harry's office and closed the door behind her. Nara turned to Yvonne, irritated. What do you want, Yvonne? She asked. Yvonne looked Nara up and down, as if assessing her. Finally, she faced Nara directly. Nothing. I just wanted to congratulate you. Huh? Are you surprised? Yvonne asked with a smile that Nara found unsettling. Nara stood silent, sensing that Yvonne was up to something. She decided not to let her guard down. What do you want, Yvonne? Nara asked again, her patience wearing thin. Yvonne sighed with a mischievous grin. Nothing much. I just wanted to congratulate you, and also to warn you to stay out of my way here. Stay out of your way? Why would I ever want to have anything to do with you? Nara shot back. I don't know and I don't care. Just stay out of my path or else... Or else what? Nara snapped. Yvonne looked at her and laughed. You've grown some wings, haven't you? Well, I'm not surprised. You're now an Antonov. Are you done? Nara asked, her patience wearing thin. I just don't know how you got here, and I know I can't do anything about it. Just the sight of you annoys me. Well, the feeling is mutual, Nara said almost immediately. Yvonne stared at her in anger. Nara had struck a bone in her body, but she was not going to let her have the last laugh. She smiled and looked at her. Mother sends her regards. And say hi to Gordon for me. We had a nice chat at the family dinner, Yvonne said with a smirk, flipping her hair towards Nara before walking away. Nara was left confused. Nice chat? She wondered aloud. Gordon had never mentioned anything about talking with Yvonne. What did Yvonne mean by that? She watched her until she was out of sight, her mind racing with different thoughts. What did she mean by nice chat? She immediately rebuffed the thought. She knew Yvonne always wanted to annoy her. She knew it was one of her schemes to do so. Back in Harry's office, Elena stood facing him. Why didn't you tell me you were close to Nara? Harry said, confused. Does it matter? Elena replied. You should have told me, Harry said. Well, it wouldn't have made a difference if I had mentioned that she's my best friend. Best friend? Why on earth would you want to manage your best friend? Harry asked, incredulous. Elena laughed loudly. You wouldn't want to know the reason. Well, that's none of my business. I've played my part and I hope you'll play yours, Harry said. What part? Elena asked, pretending not to understand. Harry's face remained emotionless. Come on, Elena, don't play games with me. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Elena laughed again. What are you talking about? She asked, still feigning ignorance. Harry frowned and stared at her. Oh, you mean the pictures? Don't worry, your secret is safe with me. You know, you're evil, Harry said finally. Elena frowned and looked at him intently. She moved closer, almost touching his lips with hers, then pulled back. You of all people have no right to judge me, she said. taking a few steps back. Oh, and don't think it's only your pictures I have. I know much more about you. Much more, she said with a wink. Just then, Nara walked in. She saw Harry, who looked shocked by Elena's words. She glanced between Harry and Elena, then back at Harry. What's going on? She asked, surprised. What's going on here? Nara asked again. She hadn't received a response from either Elena or Harry. Both of them looked uneasy, their faces showing signs of nervousness. Elena looked at Harry, who winked at her to say or do something that would vary Nara's attention from them. Elena knew she needed to act quickly to avoid arousing her suspicion. Oh, nothing much. I was just telling Harry about Yvonne, Elena said, trying to sound casual. Yvonne? Nara questioned. Yes, that's what we were discussing before you came. .nd, Harry added. Nara eyed them suspiciously, unconvinced by their answers. She scrutinized them closely. She was still doubtful of their answers. She would tell from the way that they answered. Enough with the questions, Harry said, sensing the awkward tension. Come, have a seat. Let's plan your schedule. Reluctantly, Nara sat down. Her suspicion remained, but she decided to set it aside for now. Elena, sitting beside Nara, silently sighed with relief that Nara didn't press further. She waited for Harry to brief them on the schedule. We've planned numerous photo shoots and events for you. You'll be quite busy for a while. Elena will handle your schedule, Harry began. Oh, and there's a fashion show coming up. The training sessions for that will be emailed to your manager. Training sessions? Nara asked, surprised. Yes. Is there a problem? Harry inquired. Oh no, it's fine, Nara quickly replied. But inwardly she knew that the training sessions meant she would have to see her sister Yvonne more often. Well then, everything is settled. Feel free to reach out if you encounter any challenges, Harry said, standing up. Nara and Elena also stood. Harry extended his hand, and they shook it. Welcome to Dynasty, he said with a smile. He glanced at Elena, who gave him a mischievous smirk, and quickly turned back to Nara. We'll be on our way now, Nara said as she headed for the door, with Elena following behind her. As soon as they closed the door behind them, Elena sighed with relief. Let's go get some drinks, Nara, she suggested immediately. For what exactly? Nara asked. Well, first off, for getting signed and also for me being your manager. It's worth celebrating, don't you think? Elena replied. In this? Nara asked, pointing at the long dress she was wearing. Well, there must be something you can change into, right? I don't know about that. Don't worry, I'll get you something nice to change into on our way. They entered the elevator and Elena pressed the button for the first floor. As the elevator descended, Nara turned to Elena with raised eyebrows. Elena smiled and asked, What do you want to ask? First, what kind of strings did you pull to get this job? It's my little secret, Elena said with a grin. Since when did we start keeping secrets? Elena turned and faced her. Don't worry, when the time is right, I will let you know. The elevator doors opened, and Elena peered out. Reporters were still waiting outside, so she quickly took off her coat and placed it over Nara's head to cover her face. What's happening? Nara asked, surprised. They're still outside waiting for you. We need to use the other exit, but you have to stay covered so they don't recognize you. Nara nodded and followed Elena. When they got outside, a black luxury car pulled up in front of them. Elena was surprised. She wondered who the driver was coming for. Nara raised her head and saw the driver. On seeing him, a smile escaped from her face. It was Tyler, her bodyguard. Let's get in. That's Tyler, my bodyguard, Nara said, opening the car door and getting inside with Elena. How? What's he doing here? Elena whispered. Gordon must have sent him, Nara replied with a smile. You're just so lucky, Elena said. How is this luck? I know you are so proud to admit it, They burst into laughter, and as they laughed, Elena glanced at Nara from the corner of her eye. She envied Nara's life of luxury. She couldn't even remember the last time she had entered a car as luxurious as the one she was in now, and this was what Nara enjoyed alone. She felt she deserved that kind of life too, and she was determined to get it. She knew the only way to get it was by becoming an Antonov. That's why she had resolved to be Nara's manager. Being Nara's best friend alone wasn't enough to grant her a free pass to the Antonov mansion. She needed something else. Being her manager was the only easier way. She needed something more substantial. As she watched her laugh, she vowed to herself that she would become an Antonov. Her first target was Briston, but if he proved difficult, she would turn her focus to Gordon. After all, his marriage to Nara was a scam, and it was never based on true feelings. She knew it was a difficult task, but she was not going to relent. Patience was all it could take before she had meandered her way into the Antonovs' lives one by one till she had gained their favor. Jeffrey parked his car in front of his usual bakery but stayed inside, waiting and watching for Rose to come out. He knew he had annoyed her the last time they met and wanted to make things right, but he wasn't sure how to approach her. As he sat in his car, he kept his eyes fixed on the bakery. Suddenly she came out with a trash bag. Seeing her, Jeffrey quickly ducked down, hoping she wouldn't spot him, his heart racing. He noticed the bandage on her head and wondered how she was managing to work at the bakery despite having been in an accident. He watched as she sorted the trash into different bins. Just then, an elderly woman in a chef's uniform came out of the bakery and called to her. Jeffrey's eyes lit up when he heard the name Love. Finally, he knew her name. He observed as the woman in Love talked briefly before she followed her back into the bakery. Jeffrey knew it was time to apologize, so he walked into the bakery, hoping to find her and also get a chance to apologize. When he didn't see her, he figured she might be in the kitchen, so he decided to pass time by looking at the pastries which were placed carefully in a show glass. Suddenly, the kitchen door opened, and Jeffrey spotted Love. He quickly grabbed a loaf of his favorite bread and headed to the counter. "I'd like to buy this bread," he said, trying to get her attention. "Drop it there," she said, still not looking up and not recognizing him. "Huh?" I said, "Drop." She stopped as she finally saw him, her expression turning to one of anger. "What are you doing here? Can we talk?" "Why should I listen to you?" she shot back. "Love, please, I just want to explain." At the mention of her name, she was surprised. "My name, how did you know?" "I thought you forgot," she said, taken aback. Jeffrey considered explaining how he found out her name but decided to keep it to himself. What mattered was that he had her attention. "Can we just talk, please?" he asked again. She looked at him and seeing the sincerity in his eyes, her anger began to soften. "Wait for me outside. I need to finish up here," she said, pointing to her apron. Jeffrey smiled, relieved that she agreed to talk. After waiting outside for a while, she finally joined him. Her arms were crossed, and her serious, stern expression left Jeffrey feeling uncertain and confused. "You wanted to talk?" she said. "Yes, but can we go to the cafe and sit?" he suggested, pointing to the cafe across the street. She looked at him and he began to feel uneasy. He adjusted his glasses and waited for her response. "Lead the way," she finally said. Jeffrey breathed a sigh of relief and led her to the cafe. Once seated, Jeffrey struggled with how to start the conversation. Her emotionless face didn't make it any easier. His heart pounded, but he knew he had to be brave. "Would you like something to drink?" he asked, trying to break the ice. "A cup of latte with extra cream," she replied. Jeffrey was surprised by her response. He was actually not expecting her to say anything. She really was giving him a lot of mixed messages. He signaled a waiter to take their orders, and after the waiter left, he cleared his throat. "First of all, I want to apologize for my behavior the last time we met. I know it was wrong, and I should have said something about the accident, but I kept quiet. It was really stupid of me. I'm sorry." She watched him, noting his genuine apology. Jeffrey waited for her response, but she remained silent. He began to feel embarrassed, wondering if he had apologized properly or not. Meanwhile, she struggled to hold back a laugh. Seeing the sweat on his forehead and his nervous gestures was actually amusing. Funny enough, she had already seen him in his car when she went to take out the trash and figured he might try to talk to her. Soon after, the waiter brought 2 cups of latte with cream on a tray and quietly set them on the table before leaving. Shay picked up her cup and took a sip, then looked at Jeffrey. "You know, you're pretty funny when you apologize," she said with a smile. "Huh?" Jeffrey responded, surprised. "Have you dated anyone before?" she asked him. He was stunned immediately. The question came as a shock to him. Here he was, battling with the apology he had just rendered to her, and she was asking him if he had been in a relationship before. "No," he said quietly. "That explains it," she said with a smile as she reclined back on her chair. How do you mean? That explains why you are so shy and can't even look me in the eyes. Huh? "I have already forgiven you," she said, still smiling. Why? Jeffrey asked, bewildered. Well, the nurse told me how you stayed by my hospital bed waiting for me to wake up. Not everyone would do that, and you rushed me to the hospital right after the accident. After all that, I figured it would be better to forgive you. Jeffrey was taken aback, unable to believe she had already forgiven him despite all the stress he had gone through. And I also saw you hiding in your car, she added. Jeffrey's eyes widened in surprise. I wasn't hiding. Well, it looked that way to me. Jeffrey wished he could disappear from the embarrassment. I'm sorry for not telling you I caused your accident. It was not intentional, he finally apologized. I've told you already I'm not angry with you. You're forgiven, she said with a reassuring smile. Jeffrey found himself smiling back at her, captivated by her beauty. For the first time, he really noticed how stunning she was, and he wondered why he hadn't seen it before. His gaze fell on the bandage on her head. Doesn't it hurt? He asked. What? Oh, this, she said, touching the bandage. It doesn't hurt as much as it looks. Jeffrey admired her, fascinated by her charming smile. He watched as she drank from her cup. The cream was on her lips when she finished drinking. She playfully used her tongue to lick it. Then, impulsively, he said, Let me make up for my mistake by taking you out to dinner. His eyes widened in shock at his own words, and he hoped she hadn't heard him. But before he could retract his offer, she looked at him and smiled. Yes, you can. Briston was resting in the comfort of his private villa, a beautiful cottage that had often served as a romantic hideaway for him and Yvonne. Tonight, he had transformed it into a romantic place. The soft flicker of candlelight danced across the room, casting warm, gentle shadows on the walls. The air was filled with the subtle, heady aroma of roses, which were carefully scattered around the room. A bottle of rich red wine was on the table, accompanied by a crystal wineglass that caught the light with a delicate sparkle. Briston, lounging on the plush sofa, was deep in thought. His mind was occupied with his desire to get closer to Andrew. He needed to meet with him again, but he didn't know how to. An idea sparked into his mind, and he quickly retrieved his phone, searching for Andrew's number in his contact list. After a few moments of frantic scrolling, he found the number and dialed it. The phone rang repeatedly, but no one answered. Undeterred, Briston tried again. This time, after a few rings, Andrew's voice finally came through, sounding slightly puzzled. Hello? It's Briston, he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. Brisson? Andrew asked. Surprised. Yes, we met at the bar a few days ago, Briston replied. There was a brief pause before Andrew responded. Okay, I remember you now. Relieved that Andrew hadn't forgotten him, he seized the opportunity. I was hoping we could hang out sometime. Huh? Andrew sounded intrigued. Yes, hang out. You know, just catch up, Briston explained. All right, text me whenever you're ready, Andrew replied quickly, surprising Briston. He was not actually expecting him to accept the invitation, but nevertheless happy with his answer, which showed that his plans were actually working. With a smile of satisfaction, he ended the call. The room, now dimmed by the breeze that had extinguished most of the candles, was still bathed in a soft romantic glow. He stood up with renewed energy, grabbing the matchbox from the table and swiftly relighting the candles. As the last flame flickered to life, he heard a knock on the door. Briston's heart raced with anticipation. He rushed to the mirror, smoothing his hair and spritzing a touch of cologne. With a final glance at the beautifully set room, he hurried to the door. When he opened it, Yvonne stood there, her expression a mix of curiosity and surprise. Without a word, Briston enveloped her in a warm hug. What's happening? She asked, her voice tinged with confusion. Am I not allowed to hug my fiancé anymore? He asked with a playful smile. Well, Yvonne began, but Briston cut her off with a gentle, shh. He guided her into the villa, excitedly announcing, I have a surprise for you, come in. Yvonne entered the villa and was greeted by a room beautifully arranged with roses and candlelight. The air was filled with an alluring scent. What's all this for? She asked, surprised. Well, I wanted to surprise the most beautiful woman in my life, Briston said, pulling her close and kissing her gently. You know I love you, right? He asked, gazing into her eyes. Yvonne looked at him, feeling a pang of guilt for her one-sided love. I know, and I love you too, she replied with a forced smile. Close your eyes, Briston instructed. Why? Yvonne asked. I got you something, he replied. What is it? She asked, but Briston cut her off. Just close your eyes, he said. Reluctantly, she did. She felt him gently remove her necklace and replace it with a new one. He guided her to a mirror and told her to open her eyes. Yvonne slowly opened her eyes and saw a glittering diamond necklace around her neck. Her eyes widened in surprise. Oh my God, is that what I think it is? She asked, her voice filled with awe. Briston smiled. Yes, it's a diamond necklace for my angel, he said, wrapping his arms around her waist. You look so beautiful. The necklace fits you perfectly. Yvonne touched the necklace, admiring it. Am I more beautiful than Nara? She asked suddenly, catching him off guard. Briston let go of her. Why bring up Nara now? Yvonne turned to him. What's wrong with mentioning her? You know how to ruin the mood, he said, walking back to the sofa and pouring himself some wine. You can't answer me, right? Yvonne pressed. Fine. You're more beautiful than Nara. Is that what you wanted to hear? Briston said, drinking the full glass. Yvonne's anger grew. Ever since Nara married your brother, my life has changed completely. How so? Briston asked. Have you seen how she talks to me now? She looks me in the eye and speaks to me in a way she never did before, Yvonne said, her voice tinged with frustration. She sat beside Briston, her face flushed. I've been so stressed thinking about it. Briston laughed. Stressed over Nara? He said, still chuckling. Stop laughing, I'm not joking, Yvonne snapped. Of course you are, everything you just said sounds like a joke, Briston replied. Stop it, Yvonne said, her anger rising. Okay, go on, Briston said, trying to lighten the mood. And the worst part is, Nara just got signed to Dynasty. Do you know what that means? Yvonne continued, her voice breaking. Do you know how many reporters came to see her? I didn't get that kind of publicity when I was signed. She sobbed. Well, it's because she's married to Gordon, Briston said gently. God, I hate her guts. I hate the way she looks at me as if she's superior. I hate everything about her, Yvonne cried out. That's because you think about her too much, Briston replied. It's not just that. She acts like everything should revolve around her, like the world is her stage, Yvonne insisted. Briston smiled and pulled her close, placing his hands on her cheeks. He kissed her softly. Let's enjoy the night instead of focusing on Nara, he suggested, kissing her again. Yvonne closed her eyes and kissed him back. Suddenly, Briston lifted her into his arms, smiling. Let's go upstairs, he said. As he carried her upstairs, Yvonne looked at him. She knew he was good to her, but he wasn't the perfect man for her. Still, she felt she needed to stay with him for now until she achieved what she wanted. Nara returned home after dark, having spent the day drinking with Elena. As she stepped out of the car, all she wanted was to tell Gordon about her successful signing day. Upon entering the house, she was greeted by Stella. Nara dear, you're back, how did it go? Beaming with joy, Nara replied, It went incredibly well, everything went so smoothly. Stella smiled warmly. I can see that from your face. I'm exhausted, Nara admitted. Why don't you go upstairs and freshen up? Dinner will be ready soon, Stella suggested. Okay, Nara said with a smile, eagerly heading upstairs. Mel has already arranged your bath, Stella added. Oh, really? Nara replied, pleasantly surprised. As she approached her room, she glanced at the door to Gordon's room. She heard voices and realized he was on the phone. Deciding not to disturb him, she returned to her room to freshen up first. Once inside her room, she shut the door and began to undress from the clothes she had bought earlier with Elena, before they went on their drinking spree. Nara entered the bathroom and settled into the bathtub, which Mel had already filled with warm water earlier. She lay back, closing her eyes and letting out a deep sigh of relief. It had been a long and eventful day. As she relaxed, she reflected on the board members' reactions when she walked into the room and the frenzy of reporters eager to speak with her. A contented smile spread across her face, and she realized how much her life had changed since meeting Gordon. Could Elena's words be true? Had Gordon truly been her good luck charm? As she thought of Elena, she recalled the peculiar look on Harry's face when she entered the office. Something had seemed off, though she couldn't quite place it. Elena must have known something, she thought. Her stomach grumbled, reminding her of her hunger. She quickly washed herself, stepped out of the tub, and grabbed her hairdryer. She dried her hair thoroughly before heading to her wardrobe. She chose a delicate pink nightgown, which she slipped into after applying her cosmetics. Standing before the mirror, she sprayed a light fragrance on her neck and let her hair cascade down her back. Satisfied that everything was perfect, she admired her reflection, ready for the evening ahead. Nara stepped out of her room, carefully closing the door behind her. She walked eagerly towards Gordon's room, pressing her ear against the door to listen for any sounds. The hallway was quiet, and she could hear nothing. She knocked softly before turning the handle and pushing the door open. Inside, Gordon was sprawled on the bed, his attention focused intently on his laptop. The room was dimly lit, with the soft glow of the laptop screen casting shadows on his face. As soon as Nara entered, Gordon looked up and was immediately captivated by her appearance. The nightgown she wore clung gracefully to her figure. The soft fabric and its subtle sheen highlighted her curves, and the gown's color contrasted beautifully with her skin. Gordon couldn't help but be mesmerized by how perfectly the nightwear suited her. "Hey," Nara said in a calm, gentle voice, standing a few feet from the bed. Gordon's eyes followed her as she approached. "Why are you so far? Come and sit here," he said, patting the space beside him on the bed. "Huh?" Nara responded, surprised by his request. "Come here," Gordon repeated, his voice coaxing. Reluctantly, Nara walked closer and sat down next to him. Her face was lit with a bright, genuine smile. "How did it go?" Gordon asked, his curiosity evident. Nara's eyes sparkled with excitement. "You won't believe it. When I walked into the boardroom, everyone stood up to greet me. The reporters were all eager to talk to me. Everything was happening so fast." "Really?" Gordon asked, his smile widening with pleasure. As Nara turned to face him fully, her excitement was abruptly halted when she noticed his swollen cheeks. Her expression shifted to concern. What happened to your face?" she asked, reaching out to touch his cheek gently. Gordon met her gaze with a smile, knowing he couldn't reveal the truth about his encounter with Andrew. He preferred to keep that to himself. "It's nothing. I fell down." "You fell?" Her voice filled with disbelief. "Yes, of course. Or do you think I'm lying?" "Yes, of course. How can a grown man fall?" "Well, this grown man fell today," he said, smiling. Nara looked at him. She knew he was lying, but she didn't want to press further. His cheeks looked really swollen and red. "It hurts, right?" "Not really," he replied, trying to prevent her from worrying too much. As he looked at her, the scent of her perfume filled the air, its sweetness mixing with the dim light in her concerned gaze. Her eyes, full of care and warmth, drew his attention. He shifted his gaze from her eyes to her full red lips, which seemed even more inviting under the soft light. Unable to resist, he slowly leaned in and touched his lips to hers. The kiss was soft and tentative, but the moment she felt his lips, Nara's eyes widened in shock. She pulled away quickly, her face a mask of disbelief and anger. Without a word, she slapped him on the cheek. "Don't you ever try that again?" she shouted, her voice trembling with emotion. She turned on her heel and stormed out of the room, leaving Gordon stunned and silent. Gordon could feel his heartbeat as the sting from Nara's slap was still fresh on his face. He had acted on impulse, his emotions swirling in a chaotic mix of regret and confusion. Without thinking, he chased after her, his voice trembling with urgency. "Nara, wait!" he pleaded, grabbing her hand as she was about to enter her room. Nara's response was swift and harsh. "What is it? What do you want?" Her tone was laced with fury, and her eyes, red and brimming with anger, locked onto him with piercing intensity. Gordon exhaled calmly. "I'm sorry," he said softly, still clutching her hand. "Can you let go of my hand?" she snapped, her face flushed with emotion. Her anger was palpable, a fiery storm that clouded her judgment. Gordon knew she was not in the right frame of mind to reason with him. He reluctantly released her hand. Nara didn't wait for a second. She hurried into her room and slammed the door shut. Gordon stood outside her door. His face was etched with a forlorn expression. He wondered what gave him the audacity to kiss her. He slowly retreated to his own room, his steps heavy with regret. Inside her room, Nara was consumed by a tumult of emotions. She threw herself onto her bed, covering herself with the sheets in an attempt to shield herself from what had just happened a few minutes ago. The kiss replayed in her mind, vivid and unavoidable. She suddenly thought of Andrew, and almost immediately a pang of guilt flooded her mind. Desperate to escape the emotions she was dealing with, she closed her eyes tightly. Soon she drifted off to sleep. Nara woke up the next morning feeling gloomy. She reached for her phone, which had been vibrating with a series of missed calls. The screen displayed several notifications, all from Elena. Confused and groggy, Nara noticed the time. It was well past 9. She wondered why Elena could call her so early in the morning. She rubbed her eyes and quickly dialed Elena's number. The connection was immediate, and Elena's sharp voice cut through the haze of sleep. "Nara?" Elena's tone was urgent and clipped. Nara's voice, still thick with sleep, responded hesitantly. "Why are you calling so early in the morning? Don't tell me you didn't read the email I sent last night." "Email?" Elena's voice escalated in frustration. "You didn't read it? You have a photo shoot today." Nara's mind raced as she tried to piece together the situation. "Huh? Photo what?" Elena didn't wait for further questions. "You know what? Text me the address to your house. I'll come get you myself." Her voice softened slightly with urgency. "And get dressed quickly," she added before abruptly ending the call. Nara stared at her phone, still trying to process the conversation. She scrambled out of bed, her movements hurried and clumsy, as she tried to shake off the lingering fog of exhaustion. She was also surprised on how she could be having a photo shoot she was not aware of. She quickly opened her email to check, and there it was, the message Elena had sent. She sighed deeply. She quickly texted the address to Gordon's house to Elena and rushed to freshen up before she arrived. Nara emerged from her room dressed in a red crop top paired with baggy pants, a casual yet stylish outfit. She had neatly tied her hair into a bun, applied nude makeup, and sprayed her favorite perfume before heading downstairs. As she descended the stairs, she could hear the distinct voices of Jeffrey and Gordon carrying up from below. The sound of Gordon's voice made her pause. A sudden wave of embarrassment washed over her as she remembered the slap she had delivered the previous night. The realization that she had raised her hand to him, something she would never have imagined herself doing, made her hesitate on the stairs. Her cheeks flushed with a mix of guilt and shame. In a bid to avoid the awkward encounter, she decided to go back into her room, but the insistent ringing of her phone revealed her presence. Jeffrey and Gordon looked up, their expressions shifting as they noticed her standing halfway down the stairs. Nara's gaze was fixed on Gordon, who met her eyes briefly before quickly averting his gaze. The air was thick in silence, and the only thing that could be heard was the persistent ringing of Nara's phone. Jeffrey, breaking the silence, said, "Your phone is ringing." Nara, startled, quickly responded, "Oh," and answered the call. It was Elena. "Elena, I'll be out in a jiffy," she said hurriedly before ending the call. She descended the final steps, her demeanor tense and awkward. As she reached the bottom, Gordon's gaze flicked back to her momentarily before he deliberately looked away. Nara, feeling the weight of the situation, merely nodded at Jeffrey and walked past him, heading for the door. Jeffrey, who had observed the silent, awkward situation, was surprised. The usual warmth between Gordon and Nara seemed absent. He had noticed that Gordon was always cheerful whenever he saw Nara, but today his demeanor was noticeably different, cold and detached. Jeffrey wanted to ask if something had happened. "What's happening?" Jeffrey finally asked Gordon, breaking the uneasy silence. Gordon's response was nonchalant. "What do you mean?" Jeffrey pressed, "What's going on between you and Nara?" Gordon looked at him with a forced smile. "You don't need to worry. Everything is fine." "What were we discussing before?" Jeffrey noticed that Gordon was not going to tell him what the problem was. He decided to drop the matter and possibly wait till when he was ready to confide in him. Dynasty Agency had a tradition of providing their models with luxurious buses upon their signing, and today was no exception. Elena arrived at Gordon's mansion in one of the luxury bus which was gifted to Nara. As the grand gates to the estate swung open, she was struck by the splendor of the place. Her eyes widened in astonishment as she took in the sight of the mansion, its grandeur accentuated by the presence of well-dressed bodyguards stationed at every possible entry point. When Nara emerged from the entrance door, Elena signaled to the driver, who promptly opened the bus doors. Where did the bus come from? Nara asked, her voice tinged with surprise. Part of your signing gifts? Elena replied with a smile, her tone light and enthusiastic. Nara gave a faint shrug, her mood subdued as she took a seat beside Elena on the bus. Gosh, Nara, I can't believe you live in a place like this, Elena said, her voice filled with admiration. Nara's response was nonchalant. What's wrong with this place? It's huge, Elena exclaimed, clearly impressed. Nara offered a detached, oh, her mood clouded by a lingering sense of unease. Elena noticed her gloomy demeanor and asked, What's with that look on your face? What's the problem? Nara sighed. It's fine. I just woke up feeling weird today. Elena observed her friend with concern but decided not to press further. You can rest in the car if you're still feeling sleepy. The venue for the shoot is quite far. Nara forced a smile. Don't worry, I'll be fine. She closed her eyes, her thoughts preoccupied with the previous night's events, particularly the slap she had given Gordon. The unresolved feelings from that incident overshadowed her excitement about the day ahead. The photo shoot was for a renowned fashion brand, eager to showcase Nara as their latest model following her signing. Set against the backdrop of a picturesque flower garden, the shoot aimed to capture the elegance of their new collection. Nara, with Elena's assistance, had changed into one of the brand's outfits. A flowing dress adorned with intricate floral patterns that complemented the garden's vibrant blooms. As the shoot began, the cameras flashed relentlessly, creating a dizzying array of lights. Despite the stunning setting and her beautiful attire, Nara's mind was preoccupied with thoughts of Gordon. The constant flicker of the camera lights only heightened her discomfort, making it difficult for her to focus. Her usual professionalism seemed to wane as her thoughts wandered to the events of the previous night, when Gordon had kissed her, and the subsequent slap she had delivered in reaction. The emotional weight of the situation was visibly affecting her performance. Elena, keenly observant, noticed Nara's distracted form. She had always known Nara as someone deeply committed to her work, and she somehow knew that something was wrong. She quickly approached the shoot's director. Can we go on a break? She asked. The director, visibly frustrated, replied, Why? We just started. I need to talk to Nara. Give us 5 minutes, Elena insisted, her voice carrying a note of urgency. Despite his irritation at the timing, especially after their late arrival, the director had no choice but to comply. He had received explicit instructions to ensure Nara's comfort and satisfaction. With a reluctant sigh, he raised his voice through a megaphone. Let's go on a break. Nara felt a wave of relief as the break was announced. She quickly walked back to the luxury bus. Once inside, she shut the door behind her, seeking a moment of respite. Elena followed shortly, her concern palpable. What's happening, Nara? You're behaving weirdly out there, Elena said as she entered the bus. Nara tried to brush off the concern with a dismissive, Nothing, I'm fine. Elena's gaze was unwavering. You're sure you're not? This is unlike you. Realizing she couldn't hide her distress any longer, Nara took a deep breath. Elena's insistence made it clear she wouldn't let the issue slide. Well, it's Gordon, Nara admitted finally, her voice tinged with resignation. Elena's attention sharpened immediately. What happened to Gordon? Last night, he kissed me. Elena's eyes widened in shock. He did what? He kissed me and I slapped him, Nara explained, her voice cracking with guilt. You did what? Oh my God, what is happening right now? I don't know, I acted on impulse and now I feel so guilty, Nara confessed, her voice filled with remorse. Elena's brow furrowed in confusion. Why? First, because he kissed me. What if Andrew finds out? And second, I slapped him. He's been so kind to me lately, Nara explained, her voice tinged with regret. Why on earth would you slap Gordon just because of a kiss? Elena asked her, her expression stern. It's not just a kiss. What if he likes you? Elena said, cutting her short. Nara was taken aback. Huh? Why else would he kiss you? Nara shook her head, dismissing the idea. It can't be possible! Gordon can't be in love with me! Nara, you're overthinking this, Elena said, trying to calm her. What's wrong with Gordon liking you? Is it a crime? Nara's frustration flared. Sometimes you talk as if you don't know the background of our marriage. What about Andrew? Elena's patience snapped. Gosh, Nara, quit bringing up Andrew all the time. Nara looked surprised. Huh? Yes, and you need to apologize to Gordon. You shouldn't have slapped him, Elena insisted, her tone firm. Nara sighed deeply, feeling overwhelmed by Elena's pressure. Elena glanced out the window, noting the time. We need to get back there. Tea. Must we? I'm not in the mood today. Of course, yes, Elena responded decisively. I'm going out now to meet the others. Join me outside in 2 minutes. She placed a comforting hand on Nara's arm. You'll be fine, she said with a reassuring smile before leaving the bus. Alone, Nara took a deep breath, determined not to let her current mood affect her work. She knew she had to keep the kiss a secret from Andrew. It was bad enough that he was upset with her. She did not want to add more problems for herself. Nara stood up, her resolve strengthening. She exited the bus with a smile. She was not going to let her emotions affect her work. Let's begin, she said almost immediately. Gordon sat in his car, observing the construction site as workers busily moved about, lifting wooden beams and iron beams. Jeffrey stood with a helmet on, supervising the activity and issuing instructions. The roar of a large tractor was audible as it hoisted massive stones from the ground, adding to the clamor of the site. As Gordon watched the scene from afar, he was not in any way interested in anything going on there. All he could think of was Nara. He couldn't get the kiss out of his mind. When he had actually seen her in the morning, he had wanted to hug her and tell her that he was sorry, but he could not. He was scared she would get aggressive like the night before. He was so deep in thought that he didn't hear Jeffrey get inside the car. Gordon Jeffrey called him, but he did not answer. Gordon Jeffrey pressed further, this time tapping him on the shoulder. Gordon shuddered immediately. He felt Jeffrey's hands on his shoulder. Jeffrey. I did not see you come in, he said, adjusting himself properly. I came in a few seconds ago, but you barely noticed. I was watching them, he said, pointing towards the workers at the construction site. How is the work going? Jeffrey looked at him and sighed. Well, everything is going according to pace. Let's say in a few weeks' time we will start laying the foundation of the building. Gordon closed his eyes and listened to Jeffrey talk about the construction site and other work-related stuff. Soon his thoughts were diverted again. He was so deep in thought that suddenly he couldn't hear Jeffrey speak. The only sound he could bear was his heart beating. Everything and everywhere grew silent at that moment. Gordon. Jeffrey tapped him on his shoulders. Gordon shuddered again. Okay, he said, trying to make Jeffrey think that he was actually listening to him. Jeffrey looked at him. He knew something was off and wrong, and he knew it must have something to do with Nara. What's wrong, huh? Something is definitely wrong, so tell me. Jeffrey, everything is fine. You can't say everything is fine. You have been like this since morning, getting absent-minded at every given time. Something is definitely wrong. He stopped and looked at Gordon closely. Is it Nara? Upon hearing Nara's name, he turned and looked at Jeffrey immediately. I knew it. I knew it was Nara. How did you know? Well, both of you were acting cold to each other earlier this morning. Gordon sighed and kept silent. Is anything wrong, Jeffrey? I missed Nara last night. You what? Jeffrey exclaimed. I didn't know how it happened. It just happened and what happened? She slapped me. Geez, he exclaimed. I know, right? I don't even know what came over me. I can't even look her in the eyes anymore. Jeffrey sighed deeply and kept quiet for a while. Then he turned and looked at Gordon. Do you like her? Who, Nara? Do you like her? Gordon kept quiet for a while. He seemed to be processing the question of which was just thrown at him. I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I don't know. I care about her, but Gordon, Nara has a fiancé she hopes to get back to once this whole thing is over. Yes, I know that perfectly. Don't you think it's a little bit too much to kiss her? I know, he replied softly. The other day, Nara went to see Andrew. She told you, right? Yes, she did. Did she tell you how he pushed her away and left her crying on the floor for a whole hour? What? Yes, Nara is definitely still in love with her fiancé. You just cannot go around kissing her. Gordon closed his eyes tightly. The thought of Nara being pushed to the ground pained him, and surprisingly enough, it was the day he got sick, and she came back to him smiling like nothing had ever happened. You need to keep your feelings in check. He stopped and kept quiet. The both of us already know that you do not plan on staying here for long. On hearing that, he opened his eyes immediately. Gordon had only come back to the country, possibly to make sure the company was in his name. He knew that if he continued staying abroad, his father might hand it over to his brother Briston. He only planned to remain in the country, possibly till everything was over. He had a thriving business abroad and he couldn't wait to go back to it. He began to see reasons with Jeffrey. He knew he was right. He needed to keep his feelings in check. He needed to maintain the same attitude he had when he first met Nara. He needed to do it for both their sakes. "You are right," he said finally. "When have I been wrong?" Gordon smiled. It was actually the first time he had been smiling since the day began. "Move the car!" Jeffrey ordered the driver, who had been in the front seat waiting patiently for them, to instruct him on what next to do. Gordon pressed up the window button as the driver started the car and zoomed off. Meanwhile, Jeffrey took out his phone to reply to his emails. As he scrolled up and down on his phone, his face etched with all seriousness. Suddenly a message popped up on his phone almost immediately. His face widened up in a broad smile. It was a message from Rose. Elena arrived home from the photo shoot, her energy completely depleted. She collapsed onto her bed, her body aching from the day's relentless demands. Who knew being a manager for a model could be this exhausting, she mused, reflecting on the marathon of activity she had just endured. They had been on set of the photo shoot for several hours, trying out different dresses, looking for one that could suit Nara. And also, the photo process took a long while. The photo shoot itself was equally demanding. It involved a protracted series of snapshots, with the photographers continuously adjusting their angles and lighting to capture Nara at her best. Many snapshots were taken, and she couldn't help wondering how exhausted Nara could be, because she did most of the work there. She had changed into different outfits, gone through different kinds of makeovers and hairdo. She knew Nara must also be exhausted like she was, if anything more than she was. She immediately got up from bed. She needed to freshen up and change into something more comfortable. She went into her wardrobe and took a baggy cotton trouser and a big polo. She carefully placed them on the bed and made her way to the bathroom to have her bath. As she let the water pour on her, she couldn't help but think about what Nara had told her earlier that day. Up till that moment, she couldn't help but wonder what gave her the audacity to slap Gordon just because of a mere kiss. She couldn't help but wonder why Nara was still stuck on Gordon instead of embracing her newfound life with Gordon. She knew that if she was in her position, if roles were interchanged, she could have returned the kiss instead of slapping him. She hurriedly took her bath and went out of the bathroom. After drying her hair and putting on her clothes, she opened the door to her room and went straight to the kitchen, possibly to get something to eat. She was really starving. She opened her fridge in high spirits, hoping to find something to eat. She needed something quick and easy to eat, possibly flakes with liquid milk, but her hopes crashed when she was met with a half-empty fridge. She had forgotten to restock her fridge. The only thing she could find were packs of spaghetti and the ingredients to make spaghetti. She closed the fridge in anger. She had no plan on cooking that day. She quickly took out her phone and ordered a box of pizza. She went back into her fridge and took out a can of soft drink, possibly to drink it until her order arrived. She went back to her sofa, opened it and began to drink it, also occupying herself with her phone. She opened her gallery, which was locked with a password. Pictures of Harry with different models in his agency popped open. She smiled when she saw it. "Gosh, Elena, you are so smart," she said, appraising herself. Elena knew that it was going to be a very difficult task getting into Dynasty Agency, and the only way she knew she could get there was by blackmailing the director himself. She had laid someone to snoop out his dirty linens, which he tried so much to hide from the public, and luckily for her, the spy came back with pictures of evidence. As she looked through the pictures, smiling mischievously at each and every one of them, a knock came on the door, interrupting her. "That was fast," she said immediately as she rushed to open the door for her pizza delivery. Her eyes widened in surprise when she saw Andrew standing right in front of her. "Hey," he said with a wave of the hand. "What are you doing here? You won't let me in first?" Elena looked at him from head to toe and walked out, leaving the door open for him to enter. Andrew smiled and followed her closely behind. "Thank you," he said before sitting down. Elena ignored him and walked to her fridge. Opening it, took out another can of drink. "Here," she said, handing it over to him, before finally taking a seat. "Now tell me, why are you here?" Andrew smiled. "To talk, obviously." "Talk about what? I met Gordon. Why?" she asked, surprised. "To talk, obviously." She sighed deeply. So, how is that of any concern to me? Well, just to clear something up. Clear what? Don't tell Nara about the kiss. It was a mistake and it will never happen again. Elena suddenly burst into laughter. She laughed so loudly she could feel tears rushing down her eyes. What's funny? You are just so funny. Anyway, keep it a secret. I don't want Nara to know about it. You still plan on waiting for her? Yes, of course. Why won't I? Even after everything that has happened. Yes. Even after everything that has happened, Elena. Even after Gordon. She stopped talking immediately. She was about to tell Andrew about Gordon kissing Nara, but she stopped immediately. The man in front of her was better than the last time she had seen him, and she didn't want to spoil things for him, at least not yet. Huh? Elena turned and looked at him. Never mind, what did Gordon do? He asked her. Nothing. Nothing. Andrew sighed irritatedly. He immediately stood up. I will get going now. Okay, Andrew, Elena said, smiling, and I hope our secret remains with us. Bye, Andrew, Elena said, smiling mischievously. Andrew looked at her and shook his head. Elena was a puzzle he couldn't really place. You know you are one heck of a problem, he said. Elena shook her head and looked at him indifferently. Feeling annoyed by the way she looked at him, he looked at the table and took the can of drink she had given him. I will take that, he said, and walked to the door. Opening it, he was met by a delivery man carrying a box of pizza. Pizza order for Miss Elena Campos, she said. Andrew looked at him annoyingly and immediately shoved him and passed. Elena shook her head in amusement as she watched him from where she sat. In here, she said finally to the delivery man who had been standing puzzled at the door. Edward Vespertine was deeply engrossed in his study, searching frantically for something. His study was a mess to behold. Books were on the ground, and everything was turned upside down. Edward's face was etched with worry, his normally composed features now marred by deep lines of stress. Sweat beads gathered on his forehead. He rummaged through files with a growing sense of urgency, his movements frantic and disorganized. He rummaged through files which were scattered on the table. His attention was abruptly diverted by the shrill ring of his phone, which he snatched up with a sense of desperation. The voice at the other end was his secretary. Hello? Edward barked angrily. Sir, the board members are ready and waiting for you, came the strained voice. Edward's patience snapped. His secretary's response only added to his irritation. He exhaled sharply. Stall for some time. I'm already on my way, sir. They said they have waited enough. They all said they have other important engagement to attend to. Edward's anger fueled the more. I said stall for some time, and if they are not there by the time I get there, you can kiss your job goodbye, he snapped before abruptly ending the call. His eyes then fell upon a pink file, a rare splash of color amidst the sea of gray and brown folders. The sight of it seemed to spark a glimmer of hope in him. Clutching the file, he dashed out of the room, nearly colliding with his wife, Gwen. Gwen, having overheard the phone conversation, wore an expression of deep concern. She stepped into his path, her worry evident. What's going on, honey? What's the problem? She asked, her voice trembling with anxiety. Edward, barely pausing, responded curtly, I don't have time now, honey. I have somewhere I have to be right now. Without another word, he hurried past her, nearly crashing into Yvonne, who had just entered the house. Yvonne's puzzled gaze followed him as he rushed out. She was utterly confused. It was the first time she had seen him run in such a manner. As Gwen hurried down the stairs, her face was etched with deep concern, each step marked by a growing sense of urgency. Yvonne, having just witnessed her father's frantic departure, was visibly shaken. Her confusion was palpable as she struggled to make sense of what had just happened. What's wrong with Dad? Yvonne asked, her voice tinged with worry as she tried to catch up with her mother. Gwen, catching her breath, asked, Has he gone? Her tone was laden with anxiety, her eyes scanning for any sign of her husband's return. Yes, Yvonne replied, her voice trembling. He almost pushed me down and didn't even say anything. Gwen's face fell, her worry deepening. I think it has something to do with work, she admitted, her voice cracking slightly. Work? Yvonne echoed, her eyebrows knitting together in confusion. Yes, Gwen confirmed. He was shouting at someone over the phone and left hurriedly with a file in his hands. This is serious, Mum. I've never seen Dad like this, Yvonne said, her voice breaking. Gwen's distress was evident as she said, I'm scared too. I'm scared about his health. He might break down soon. Her hands trembled as she spoke, her eyes reflecting her fear. Yvonne approached her mother, placing a reassuring hand on her arm. Mom, everything will be fine. Gwen shook her head. I don't think so, Yvonne. The investors are already pulling out. Investors? Yvonne repeated, her face falling in disbelief. Yes, Gwen said. They're pulling out one by one. Yvonne's confusion deepened. How? How? I don't understand. That's why I've been telling you to get closer to Gordon, Gwen urged. Mom, it's not as easy as it sounds, Yvonne protested. If you're with Gordon, you could convince him to invest in your father's business. When other investors see this, they might stay invested, Gwen argued. Yvonne sighed deeply. But Mom, or do you want to go begging Nara for help? That will be over my dead body, Mom. I can't bear the thought of seeing her face every day, let alone asking her for help. Then get close to Gordon. Simple, Gwen insisted. Can't you remember what happened the last time during the family dinner? That's because you came in too strong. You might have overwhelmed him, Mom. That's not what it looked like, you know. It was the first time in my life I was actually scared of someone, Yvonne added again. Gwen sighed and looked at her. I did not raise a weakling, did I? Yvonne shook her head. Now listen here. Do everything you must do to get Gordon on our side, unless you are ready to lose everything we have worked for. At that moment, the sound of footsteps echoed from the corridor. Gwen turned sharply, her voice sharp and commanding. Who is there? Almost immediately, Selina emerged from the corridor, balancing a stack of towels in her arms. The towels were stacked high so that they covered her face, preventing her from seeing the person standing in front of her. Gwen's sharp eyes focused on Selina as she entered, her irritation flaring. What were you doing there? She snapped, her voice slicing through the air. Selina's face paled. Don't tell me you were eavesdropping on our conversation, Gwen continued, her tone harsh. No, ma'am, I just came in from the laundry room, Selene stammered, her hands trembling slightly as she tried to steady the towels well. Yvonne, unable to contain her anger, stepped forward. You lying old hag, she hissed, grabbing her by the arms. In the struggle, the pile of towels tumbled to the floor in a disheveled heap. You were eavesdropping on us, weren't you? Selina's fear was palpable as she tried to defend herself. I promise I wasn't listening to anything, she pleaded. Let her go, Gwen ordered, her voice firm. Yvonne reluctantly released her, but the force of her action caused her to stumble and fall to the ground. Gwen's face curled into a mischievous smile as she approached her, who was now on the floor trying to regain her composure. Now you look here and listen to me. Whether you were eavesdropping or not, if a word of what we've said gets outside, I promise you, I will skin you alive. Am I clear? Selina, her eyes wide with fear, nodded vigorously. Let's go, Gwen said to Yvonne, who had been smiling throughout the confrontation. As they walked away, Selina stared after them in disbelief. She had always known Gwen and Yvonne to be harsh, but their behavior crossed a line she had hoped they would never reach. The mention of Nara struck a particularly painful chord. She had overheard everything from the beginning of the conversation, and was now torn. She needed to inform Nara, but she lacked a mobile phone and had no idea where Nara lived. With a deep sigh, she glanced at the scattered towels on the floor, gathered them, and folded them quickly. After tidying up, she stood up and made her way back upstairs, her mind racing with the urgent need to find a way to alert Nara. A sudden knock on the door jolted Penelope from her deep afternoon nap. Groggy and disoriented, she rubbed her eyes and opened the door to find one of their timid maids standing before her, a look of nervousness etched on her face. What is it? Penelope barked, her voice laced with irritation. Ma'am, the maid stammered, Peter is here to see you. The mention of Peter's name instantly dispelled Penelope's sleepiness. Her eyes widened in alarm as her mind raced with questions. What right did he have to come to her home unannounced? Was he trying to expose their relationship? The thought unsettled her deeply. Penelope's gaze fixed on the maid, who seemed even more apprehensive under her scrutiny. What are you still doing here? She snapped. The maid, visibly frightened, quickly retreated, eager to escape Penelope's temper. Penelope turned to face her reflection in the nearby mirror. Her makeup, though smudged from sleep, still held its original glamour. She made quick adjustments, ensuring her appearance was pristine, then selected a new outfit before heading downstairs. In the living room, Peter was seated on one of the plush sofas. Upon spotting Penelope, he rose with a sheepish grin, his expression a mix of nervousness and eagerness. What are you doing here? Penelope whispered sharply, her eyes darting towards the bodyguards stationed at a distance, hoping to keep their conversation private. Peter's grin widened. "Come on, is that how you welcome me?" Her brow furrowed. "What are you doing here, Peter? How can you just walk into my home and ask to see me?" Peter shrugged, his smile remaining. "What's wrong with it?" he replied, his casual tone only deepening Penelope's unease. "Everything is wrong with it. What if Jacob comes home?" Penelope whispered urgently, her eyes darting anxiously towards Peter. Her agitation grew when she heard the unmistakable sound of the large gate opening. "Gosh, Jacob's home!" she exclaimed, panic rising in her voice. Despite the commotion, Peter remained seated on the sofa with an air of calm detachment, his relaxed posture starkly contrasting with her distress. "Why are you still sitting?" she demanded, her tone sharp as she glanced back at the door. Almost immediately, Jacob entered the living room, accompanied by Briston. The sight of them momentarily distracted Penelope from her mounting anxiety. "Uncle Peter!" Briston shouted with excitement, rushing forward to envelop Peter in a warm hug. His joyful exuberance was palpable and his genuine affection was evident as he clung to Peter. "Briston, you've grown so big. I didn't even recognize you when I saw you," Peter exclaimed, his smile widening as he returned the embrace. Briston laughed, his face lighting up with a bright smile. "I'm sorry I didn't come to see you earlier when you came back. Oh, that's not a problem. You're seeing me now, aren't you?" Peter cut in, his tone cheerful and reassuring. Briston's smile remained as he inquired, "How is Auntie?" Peter's expression softened slightly. "She's fine, getting better by the day," he replied, his smile waning just a touch. "Wow, that's good to know," Briston said, his tone upbeat. "Aha, lest I forget, Jacob tells me you're engaged," Peter continued. Briston's laughter filled the room. "Dad couldn't even wait for me to tell you the news myself," he said, turning to Jacob, who had been standing beside Penelope with a bemused smile. "So, when do I get to meet her?" Peter asked. "I think, you know what?" Peter interrupted. "Jacob, how about a family hangout?" "Hangout?" Jacob asked, surprised. "Yes, invite Gordon and his wife too. I need to see how much he's grown," Peter suggested. Jacob's hearty laugh filled the room. "That won't be a problem. Don't worry, I'll make the necessary arrangements." Good. "That's good," Peter responded, visibly pleased. "Now, will you all let Peter and me have a moment to ourselves?" "We have something very important to discuss," Jacob added, his voice carrying a note of authority as she sought to reclaim some privacy. Penelope's eyes widened in surprise as she realized that Peter had come to see Jacob, not her. Her earlier panic had been for nothing and he knew it. He kept quiet all this while and watched her get frantic. She realized that Peter was delighted at seeing her angry and unsettled. With a forced smile, she said, "Okay, honey, I'll send someone to get refreshments." "That will be great," Jacob responded, settling into a chair with a relaxed demeanor. "Come on, Briston, let's leave them to discuss," Penelope said, guiding her son away. Once out of Jacob's sight, she stopped and turned to Briston. "Is there any improvement with Andrew?" Briston's face brightened with a smile. "Yes, Mum. Once I fix the date and venue, we'll be meeting up soon. Do that quickly." "We don't have the luxury of time anymore," Penelope said firmly before heading upstairs, her resolve evident in her brisk, purposeful stride. A taxi pulled up in front of a big restaurant with neon lights shining with the help of the nightlights. Love stepped out of the taxi, dressed in a black dinner dress that clung to her body, her hair packed up in a bun, and she complemented the dress with silver shoes. She smiled and heaved a sigh as she walked into the restaurant. It was actually the first time she had gone into the restaurant and the sight amazed her. The sound of soft classical music filled the air. A man dressed in a suit walked up to her as she stood admiring the serenity before her. "Good evening, ma'am," he greeted with a smile. Love nodded her head in response. "Do you have a reservation with us?" "Oh, yes. Jeffrey Salvador." "Oh, come with me, ma'am," the man said with a smile and led the way inside. As they walked, she noticed that there were a few people inside the restaurant, and it amazed her. The smell of intercontinental cuisines filled the air. "Table 12, the man said, finally ushering her to the table before leaving immediately. Suddenly she caught sight of Jeffrey. He was dressed in a black suit and looked quite different that night. He looked more handsome. Jeffrey, on sighting her, stood up immediately and waved at her, smiling. She was beautiful. He was not expecting her to look this good because she was always dressed in trousers and t-shirts. She looked quite different in the dinner dress. He walked up to her, smiling. You look different. Different? Yes, in a good way. Love smiled happily. Come and have a seat, Jeffrey said as he brought out a chair for her to sit on. After she had sat down, he came over and sat down. Once they sat, they both kept on smiling, each of them not knowing what to say next. You said I look different. What do you mean by that? Love finally asked. Well, you are always in trousers. Seeing you dressed like this is quite appalling and surprising. Appalling? Yes, but you look beautiful. Love smiled. Thanks for the compliment. You don't look quite bad yourself. Jeffrey smiled and nodded in response to her compliment. Love was still looking around, admiring the environment. This is a nice place. Do you frequent here? Love asked him. No, not really. Isn't this place meant for couples and dates? Couples. Does that mean we are a couple now? Love asked, smiling playfully. Huh? No, Jeffrey stammered. Love burst into laughter as she turned to face Jeffrey. His cheeks were already flushing with embarrassment. I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable. No, Jeffrey muttered. No, you did not, he said finally. Love smiled and stared at him. Jeffrey, noticing the way she stared at him, began to feel uneasy. That was the thing with Love. She had a knack at staring so hard. Her eyes glittered as she did it, and he tried so hard to avert his eyes from her without making her notice. He needed to bring up a discussion as fast as possible. That was the only way she could stop staring. I'm sorry about your accident, he finally said. You have apologized already, it's nothing. Besides, I'm healed already. Okay, can I ask a question? Love became surprised. She wondered about the kind of question Jeffrey was about to ask her. Okay, go on. Why were you still working at the bakery despite the fact that you had a head injury? Oh, well, it didn't hurt as bad as it looked. Jeffrey looked at her in a way he knew she was lying. What? Nothing. You can't say nothing. The look on your face does not say nothing. She used her fingers to make the quotation sign. What look, that look? The one you make when you think I am not saying the truth. Are you lying? Jeffrey had a way of getting the truth out of someone. He would give you a kind of look that would make you feel guilty, and that was exactly what he had done to her. She sighed deeply. It's not a big deal, actually. What's the problem, Love? The bakery? They said they would take it from us if we are not able to pay the loan. Who? And who are us? My father and I. My father. My money from loan sharks a long time ago, and he used the bakery as collateral. Now they are threatening to take it from us. What? You know the worst part, we have not even exceeded the payment date. Then why are they bent on taking it? I don't know, geez, this is bad, he exclaimed. Love smiled. The bakery is not even doing well. I have to pay the workers and also save enough to pay back. Our debt. Jeffrey sighed deeply, then he looked at her again. You. Why are you doing it alone? What of your father? My father is sick. He has been sick for quite some time now. Oh my God. I'm so sorry, he said, apologizing. Oh, don't be— No, really, I'm sorry, I didn't know he was sick. That explains why I only see you around the bakery and not him. Love smiled. I have bored you with my pity talks, right? Oh, no, Jeffrey said, shaking his head. Don't lie, I know I have, Love said, smiling. Soon a waiter came in with a trolley containing the order Jeffrey had placed while waiting for her. I ordered something before you came. I hope I ordered for your fancy. The waiter carefully dropped the plates on the table, each of the plates covered. He also dropped a bottle of champagne with champagne glasses. Before he left, he poured the wine into the cup. Bon appetit, he said before leaving. Jeffrey helped Love to open the covering of her plate and her face lit up in excitement. Jeffrey had ordered her favorite meal. How do you know I liked stir-fry spaghetti with beef? She asked, surprised. You like that? Yes, of course. Jeffrey smiled, pleased with himself. I just made a random guess. It seemed I made the right choice. Rose giggled and began digging into her meal. Jeffrey ordered steaks with a bowl of caviar for himself, and he also dug into it. So tell me, Jeffrey, tell me about yourself, Rose asked as she drank from her wine glass. Me? Yes, you. Who else is sitting in front of me, Love said, smiling, and placed her fork down, eager to listen to him. Well, there is nothing much to say. I am an orphan. Orphan? Yeah, my parents died a long time ago. I grew up in a foster home before I was adopted by a couple who also died a few years after. Geez, you would say death follows me around, right? Jeffrey said, laughing. Oh, no. That's a very horrible thing to say to yourself. It's not your fault. You are just a victim of circumstance. Jeffrey looked at her and smiled. He loved how she was deeply interested in his story. So, what do you do? Well, I work, he said, still trying to figure out how he could tell her the kind of job he had. What kind of work? Well, I'm into real estate, he lied. He didn't want to tell her what he really did, and he didn't know why he did that. He just felt like it was not yet the right time to do so. Real estate? Yes, how? How did you pull it off? Hard work, Love smiled. I'm happy for you. I'm happy you didn't let your problems deter you from your achieving your dreams, she said, finally smiling at him. Jeffrey looked at her and smiled. She was really beautiful when she smiled. Suddenly, he felt a sense of guilt. He felt bad for lying to her. But he needed to do it. He was not planning on building any deep connections with her. He was going to leave with Gordon soon. There was no need telling her what he did. Our food is getting cold, he said finally, ushering her to continue with their meal as the sound of the soft classical music filled the air. Nara had just rounded up with another photo shoot session and was having her makeup removed when her phone rang. She ignored it, but it rang again. She decided to pick it up, looking at the caller ID. It was Andrew. Her eyes lit up immediately. Ever since their last meeting, she had been scared to even talk to him. Seeing his call made her heart beat. Hello? She said softly. Hey, Nara. Andrew's soft voice came from the other end. How are you? He continued. Nara nudged the makeup artist who was removing her makeup to hold on till she was done with the call. I'm fine, she said calmly. I'm sorry for the other day, he apologized. Nara kept quiet. She didn't know what she felt. She didn't know if she was angry or happy. She just kept quiet. Nara, are you there? Yes, I said I was sorry, he apologized again. Okay, she replied calmly. Andrew kept quiet. He knew she was angry. He knew she had not accepted his apology. Can we see, huh? Please, Nara, don't say no. She sighed deeply. She knew she needed to see him, at least to clear up their misunderstanding. Okay, you can come over to my place then. Nara kept quiet. Okay. Thank you, he said, his voice filled with appreciation. I love you, he said before hanging up the call. Nara dropped her phone on the dressing table, her mind filled with thoughts. She wondered if she could tell Andrew about her kiss with Gordon, or if she should let it go. She knew he wanted to meet up with her to reconcile. She knew telling him about the kiss might escalate matters. Suddenly, her mind went back to the contract. She suddenly began to wonder how Andrew knew about the contract. She knew she had not told him. In fact, she couldn't even remember telling him. Almost immediately, the door to the dressing room was flung open, and Elena came in carrying the clothes in which she had used to shoot. She looked at Elena. She remembered she was RH only one that knew about the contract apart from Gordon and Jeffrey. Can you excuse us for a moment? Nara said to the makeup artist. Okay, she said, and left the room for Nara and Elena. Phew. I am so tired, Elena said as he fell into a seat. Nara looked at her, still in doubt that she could tell Andrew about the contract. What's the process? Why are you looking at me like that? Andrew called. Why? He said he wanted to meet up. Are you going to see him? Yes, of course. Do you think it's a good idea right now? You know you are now a big model. Don't you think people might be watching you? Nara kept quiet and looked at her. You know something keeps on bugging me. What the last time I saw Andrew we fought, why? Did you tell Andrew about the contract I signed with Gordon? Elena's eyes widened in surprise. She was not expecting such a question from Nara. She suddenly felt uneasy, but she knew it was not going to look nice if she let her guard down. No, why, do you ask? She said with forced confidence. Nara looked at her. She watched her body movements. Elena felt uneasy. For a moment she believed that it was Elena who told Andrew, but she immediately rebuffed the idea. Elena was like a sister to her. How could she dare accuse her of something like that? He just kinda knew about it and You think I told him, right? Nara kept quiet. Come on, Nara, how could you think I would do something like that? You and I know I can't do such a thing. Then how did he find out? I don't know. Why don't you ask Gordon? Nara kept quiet. She wondered why she had not thought of Gordon or Jeffrey being the culprit. She had only pushed the blame on Elena without reasoning. She sighed deeply and reclined back into her chair. Meanwhile, Elena, seeing Nara was done with her questions, sighed quietly. It was a close call. She knew she needed to be careful henceforth. Andrew had meticulously prepared for a special evening, transforming his dining table into a scene of romance and elegance. The table was set with a pristine white napkin, and 4 red candles were strategically placed carefully. In the center of the table stood a vase overflowing with red roses, their floral fragrance wafting throughout the room. A bottle of red wine accompanied the wine glasses, promising a perfect complement to the evening's meal. As Andrew walked back into the kitchen, he hummed his favorite tune, his smile revealing his anticipation and joy. His efforts culminated in a carefully prepared dish of ratatouille, its savory aroma filling the room. Everything was in its place. Suddenly the doorbell rang. As he made to open the door, he stopped, with a sudden rush of panic. As he had forgotten to light the candles, he darted back to the dining room, his fingers fumbling through his pockets in a frantic search for the lighter. After a moment of desperation, he found it resting on the table. He quickly lit all 4 candles, ensuring that the romantic table he had prepared was complete. With a deep breath to steady his nerves, Andrew made his way to the front door, hoping that all his hard work would pay off. The doorbell rang, and his heart raced with excitement as he flung open the door. Standing there was Nara. She greeted him with a warm smile and a casual wave. Andrew's face lit up with joy, matching her smile. "Hey," he said, his voice brimming with happiness as he greeted her. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice tinged with curiosity. "Oh, of course," Andrew replied, stepping aside to let her in. As he looked around, he noticed with a hint of surprise that there was no sign of her car or driver. "What are you doing standing there?" Nara asked, breaking the silence. I don't see your car anywhere around," Andrew admitted, a touch of confusion in his voice. "Oh, I came by taxi," Nara responded, her tone casual. "Taxi?" Andrew questioned, shutting the door behind her. "Yeah, I wanted to come alone," she explained with a smile. He nodded, adjusting to the unexpected news. He led her to the dining room where she paused to admire the room he had meticulously prepared. "You did all this?" Nara asked, visibly impressed as she took her seat. Andrew had pulled out for her with a warm gesture. Nara settled into her chair, taking in the fragrant air with a contented sigh. "Something smells wonderful in here," she remarked. He beamed, his eyes twinkling with anticipation. "Take a guess." "Ratatouille?" Nara ventured confidently. "Wrong guess," Andrew laughed, sitting down beside her. "It certainly smells like it," Nara pressed, feeling more assured. With a dramatic flourish, Andrew lifted the cover from the plate, revealing the ratatouille. "Ta-da!" he announced. "I knew it," Nara exclaimed with a laugh. "I can perceive my favorite meal from miles away." He uncorked the bottle of red wine, poured it into their glasses, and placed the bottle back on the table. He looked at Nara, a hint of nostalgia in his gaze. "Do you remember our very first date?" he asked. "Of course. How could I ever forget that day?" Nara replied, her smile affectionate. "Because you threw up for hours in the toilet," he teased. "That's because the food didn't agree with me," Nara retorted, though her tone was light. "Keep telling yourself that until you believe it," he joked. Nara playfully hit him on the shoulder, and they both burst into laughter. Amid their shared joy, Andrew took Nara's hand, but his eyes were drawn to the ring on her finger, the same ring Gordon had given her. The sight of it made his expression falter with a brief flash of hurt, though he quickly masked it. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath to steady himself before opening them again. Nara noticed the change in his demeanor and instinctively tried to withdraw her hand. Andrew gently held it back, offering a reassuring smile. "It's all right," he said softly. Nara's eyes were filled with pity as she looked at him. "I'm sorry for the way I reacted the other day," he began, his voice cracking. "You don't have to—" Nara started to say, but Andrew interrupted her. No, it's all my fault. I am sorry for pushing you like that. I didn't mean it. I know I was out of place. I don't want to fight with you anymore," he said. His voice choked with regret. Tears began to spill down his cheeks, and he made no effort to hide them. Nara's heart ached as she looked into his teary eyes. They seemed to pierce through her defenses, making her feel weak. "Don't cry. You'll make me cry too," she said softly, gently wiping away the tears that had fallen from his eyes. I love you, Nara, and I don't want to lose you. I'm not ready to lose you to anyone, Andrew said, his voice a desperate plea as he clasped her hands tightly, holding them close. When I heard about the contract you signed without letting me know, I was angry. I didn't mean anything I said to you, he confessed, his grip on her hands tightening. Nara's smile was tender and reassuring. It's fine. I am fine. I was never angry with you. In fact, I am also to blame. I kept the contract away from you. If I had just told you, maybe things wouldn't have ended up like this. Thank you, Nara. Thank you for forgiving me, Andrew said, his voice laden with gratitude. Nara nodded, her smile warm and forgiving. You know, all this will end soon. Then we can be together again, Andrew said, his voice filled with hope. He leaned in closer, planting a gentle kiss on her lips. She kissed him back, her heart swelling with affection. I love you too, she said softly as their lips parted. I want you to know that I will always be by your side waiting for you, Andrew said earnestly. I know that, Nara replied, her smile unwavering. He picked up the wine glasses, handing one to Nara. He raised his glass in a toast, his face alight with a hopeful smile. To our love, he said, his voice filled with affection. To our love, Nara echoed, clinking her glass against his. They shared a quiet, meaningful moment as they savored the toast. As they turned their attention to the meal Andrew had prepared, Nara took a spoonful of the ratatouille, and her eyes widened with delight. This is good, she exclaimed, her excitement evident. I'm glad you like it, Andrew replied, his face lighting up with relief and happiness. However, as they continued eating, Nara's mind wandered back to the contract. She wondered about the source of Andrew's information. Curiosity etched on her face, she glanced at him. What is it? What's the problem? Andrew asked, noticing her sudden shift in focus. Well, you mentioned you heard about the contract. Who told you about it? Nara asked, trying to sound casual. Elena, of course. Andrew responded sharply, his tone revealing a hint of irritation. Realizing his mistake, he immediately became apprehensive. He worried that if Nara questioned Elena, she might reveal details about their kiss, which could complicate things further. Nara was taken aback. Elena had told her she hadn't mentioned anything to Andrew. The realization that Elena had been the one to inform him left her surprised and unsettled. Why? What's the problem? Why did you ask? Andrew asked, his voice filled with curiosity. Nothing really. I just wanted to know, Nara said, forcing a smile as she took a sip from her wine glass. She decided not to pursue the topic further. She knew she had to talk to Elena, at least she deserved to know why she lied to her and why she told Andrew even after she had promised her not to. She looked at Andrew, who stared at her and smiled, before she continued eating. Gordon had just finished his nightly bath. As he stepped out of the bathroom, already dressed in his pajamas, a knock on the door startled him. He knew it was not Nara. In fact, they had not spoken to each other ever since he kissed her, and she slapped him. They had successfully avoided each other like a plague. He walked steadily to the door, his curiosity piqued. Opening it, he found Stella standing there, a gentle smile on her face. Are you busy? She asked, her tone casual but carrying an undertone of concern. Oh, no, Gordon replied, stepping aside to let her in. Is something wrong? Nothing much. I just wanted to have a word with you, Stella said as she walked into the room. Her demeanor was calm, but there was a softness to her gaze that hinted at her deeper concern. Gordon closed the door behind her and followed her into the room. Stella moved with a deliberate grace towards the bed and sat down. She looked up at him, her expression a mix of curiosity and care. She patted the space beside her on the bed. Come and join me here, she said invitingly. Gordon sighed inwardly, knowing from experience that Stella's conversations were rarely brief or trivial. He sat down on the bed next to her, bracing himself for what was likely to be a lengthy discussion. Is anything going on between you and Nara? Stella's question hit him like a sudden jolt. He hadn't expected her to notice or comment on their awkward behavior. The question left him momentarily speechless. How do you mean? Gordon asked, struggling to maintain his composure. Come on, don't feign ignorance. Stella said, her voice edged with both care and curiosity. Did anything happen? Gordon sighed deeply. He knew Stella wasn't one to let things go easily, and her perceptive nature meant she wouldn't be easily satisfied with vague answers. It's nothing I can't handle, he said, trying to downplay the situation. I just want to know what the problem is, Stella pressed gently. You two don't speak to each other anymore. You don't even eat at the table together, and when you do, it's always in silence. Gordon gave a small, forced smile. We are fine, he said, though his tone was less convincing than he had hoped. Gordon, do not lie to me, Stella said firmly. I know you well enough to sense when you're avoiding the truth, so tell me what happened. He hesitated, wrestling with the decision of how much to reveal. We just had a misunderstanding, that's all, he said finally. He couldn't bring himself to discuss the kiss or the argument. He wasn't ready to share that level of detail. Then apologize to her, Stella advised, her tone gentle but insistent. So you both can go back to normal. I don't like this silent treatment. Gordon managed a reassuring smile. I will. You don't have to worry about that. Stella's gaze softened as she reached out and took his hands in hers. You know you're like a son to me. And I can't watch you break down right in front of my eyes. You hardly eat your meals, you're always moody. I know it's not just a misunderstanding. Something significant must have happened, and I understand you don't want to tell me. But follow your heart and do what's right. With a final affectionate pat on his hand, Stella rose from bed. Good night, my child, she said softly, heading towards the door. As she closed the door behind her, Gordon fell back on the bed, deep in thought. Stella's words had struck a chord. He had been gloomy ever since the fallout with Nara, and the avoidance had only deepened his mental state. He had initially thought distancing himself would help, but it only seemed to make things worse. Lying there on his bed with his eyes shut tightly, Gordon's mind raced between the conflicting desires to either follow Stella's heartfelt advice or stick with his original plan. His thoughts tangled with uncertainty and regret. As he pondered his next move, exhaustion slowly overtook him. His eyes grew heavy, and despite the turmoil in his mind, he eventually drifted off to sleep, hoping that in the morning, clarity would come with the light of day.